Am I the asshole for not giving my daughter a letter my deceased husband wrote for her before he died? In January of 2019, my husband was diagnosed with a brain tumor. It was in a completely inoperable part of the brain and was told he had 6 months to live. He stuck it out and died in October, 3 months longer than he was expected to live. He was always positive, and he decided a few weeks after his diagnosis that he would write letters for our daughters for significant events in their lives. My husband was my soulmate, and the past few months have been very difficult knowing that I've lost him. We have 2 daughters, Mia, who is 21, and Emmy, who is 19. All 3 of us have become a lot closer since their dad's death, and we've all really struggled. My husband and I were together since we were children. We got married when we were 18, and we were approaching our 20th wedding anniversary when he passed. In February of this year, Mia got married to a boy she's been with for about 6 years. I absolutely love her husband, and he's been incredibly supportive during all of our grief. My husband wrote a letter for Mia to open on her wedding day. It is worth noting that my daughters were unaware of these letters. It was my job to give them to our daughters. Her wedding day comes around, and I just can't bring myself to give her the letter. I read it and just wanted to keep it to myself. I had his handwriting and his words, and it felt like he was there, and I couldn't bear the thought of giving that up yet. I was fully intending on giving her all the letters as the events happened, though. Last week, Mia and her husband bought their first home together. They'd been living at our home since they got married, and so had a lot of stuff to pack and move to their new house. Mia asked me where her important documents were, so I told her they were in my top drawer of my dresser in my bedroom. The only letter that was in there was the one that I was meant to give her on her wedding day. The rest were hidden away. She immediately recognized his handwriting, and of course, it was addressed to her, and broke down. She came and found me and started screaming at me, asking how I could be so selfish. I didn't really know what to say, apart from the fact that I wanted to keep it and she could take a picture of it. Both my daughters called me an asshole and are convinced I'm keeping them from a load of their dad's stuff. So, am I the asshole for not giving my daughter a letter my deceased husband wrote for her before he died? Am I the asshole for not being in an HOA? I inherited a house a few weeks ago after the passing of my grandfather. The timing was perfect as I had just graduated and it wasn't that far from the area where I wanted to work. About 2 to 3 years ago, a development company bought a bunch of surrounding property to build a semi-gated community. The fence for the community ends a good few yards away from my property, but isn't closed all the way. Now that people have moved in, I've been getting HOA letters about fees, my lawn, and my house paint. I tried emailing the HOA president, but they never got back to me. I decided to crash the last meeting they had and explained that my house wasn't part of the neighborhood and therefore not part of the HOA. The president and board members tried to say that I was because of how close my property is. It isn't though, and I have documentation from the development company and the county saying it isn't. After the meeting, the president emailed back and said that regardless of the particulars, I should still try to conform to the rest of the community because I was bringing property values down. I know that I was very lucky in getting my home, and I don't want to negatively affect others, especially considering the current market. So, am I the asshole for not listening to the HOA? Am I the asshole for telling my mom's friend the reason I'm not interested in her daughter? So I stopped by my mom's house to pick up some stuff yesterday. Her friend was over because they had just gotten back from shopping. I've known my mom's friend, Carla, for a while. She has a daughter around my age and has hinted about introducing us. I was running some stuff back and forth to my car, and I heard Carla talking to my mom about how she just wished her daughter would get her life together and meet someone nice. Then she called my mom's name and asked if I'm seeing anyone, to which I said no. Then she was all like, "You should take my daughter out sometime. I'm sure you'd hit it off. She needs to meet a really nice guy like you." I was like, I'm not sure. I'm kind of busy. Then I went back in my old room. I've heard enough from both Carla and my mom about her daughter to know that she's not my type. Her daughter was in a 2-year college for 4 years and then dropped out, which is normal and not bad. Then she had a decent job and quit because it was boring. She has a drug problem and is in and out of rehab, and she bounces from one guy to the next and somehow gets them to pay her bills. A while passed and I got what I came for and was saying goodbye to my mom, and Carla started badgering me. "So when are you going to take her out? I'll let her know." I said, "Like I said, I'm kind of busy right now." "Too busy to take a nice girl out on a Friday?" "Yeah, and I'm not really interested. Sorry." "Well, why not? She's a nice, pretty girl. You'd be good for her." I was getting annoyed because I felt cornered and looked at my mom for help, but she didn't do anything. So I said, "Yeah, maybe, but that doesn't mean she'd be good for me." "What's that supposed to mean?" "Well, I'm not really into girls that don't have a job and have addiction problems." She flipped out and said, "She can't believe I'd be so rude. She's known me since I was a kid, and she was just trying to fix me up with her daughter. I should take it as a compliment instead of insulting her daughter. I could have just said no." I left my mom, and my mom called me later and said that it was really mean to say that to Carla when she was just trying to be nice, that I came off like a snobby asshole. Even if I wasn't interested, I could have been nicer about it. So, am I the asshole for telling my mom's friend the reason I'm not interested? For reporting my husband's doctor for giving my mother-in-law information about his condition without consent? I want to start by saying that my female 33 husband, male 28, has been sick for over 8 months now. I won't get into details, but his condition is serious. Ever since he got sick, I started getting constantly criticized by his mother. She tends to act so overprotective of him as her only child, and she'd constantly picker me and blame me for everything from him getting an infection or fever, saying I'm not keeping the house clean or sanitizing enough, to him staining the sheets or his clothes with vomit. Then she'd come at me saying I was being neglectful for not changing him quick enough, while all she does is sit around all her visits till I had an argument with her and she no longer comes over. As a result, she no longer got updates on my husband's condition. She tried snooping around and then publicly called me out for keeping her from seeing her son even though she visited him at the hospital a week ago. Apparently, she visited his doctor and discussed his condition. I found out when my husband's uncle called to berate me, saying my husband suffers from a skin disease because of my lack of care. I was confused and asked how he knew. He directed me to the social media post my mother-in-law made. Turned out she took medical information from my husband's doctor and shared it in a social media post with everyone using the title, "This is what my son's wife doesn't want me to know." Then she went on to say my husband was getting worse by the hour under my care or lack of, and proceeded to say I was doing this to punish her and had others agree that what I was doing was appalling and disgraceful. I was so mad because my in-laws came at me after this post. I was mostly mad at my husband's doctor. I had an argument with him and told him I won't be letting this slide after he said he had misunderstood the situation. I threatened to report him for his misconduct and refused to sit down to talk. My family got involved and supported me since this wasn't fair, but they said I should leave the doctor alone and out of my in-laws' drama since he eventually didn't lie or agreed to fabricate some false info my mother-in-law asked. They told me to step down about reporting and just focus on my husband's health, but my brother told me to do it. So I ended up reporting him. Am I wrong for this? Was I the asshole for taking back a tip after staying past closing? Last night, my husband and I went out to a very nice dinner at a steakhouse. The total was like $150 for the two of us, and we didn't even get dessert. We both prefer to tip cash, so we used a card to pay for the meal, rounded to the nearest dollar for the tip there, and then left a $50 bill on the table. The restaurant did close at 10 p.m., and it was just after 10:10 p.m. when we got outside. We both thought the $50 was enough of a tip, but the waiter disagreed. He followed us outside and got very upset that we stiffed him. At first, we thought he'd only seen the card slip, so we explained that we'd left cash on the table. He scoffed at us and said that he knows that, but 30% isn't a high enough tip. This is a very nice neighborhood, so he likely did often get higher tips, but we weren't too thrilled with his service. We had to wait for refills even though there were only a few people, maybe like 10 in the restaurant. The food also took forever to come out. We had been gone before closing and had time for dessert, but the food came very slowly. He was demanding a higher tip, so my husband pulled out 100 and asked for the 50 back. He clearly thought he was going to get the $100 bill, so he gave it back. My husband put them both in his wallet, and we got into the car and drove away. I know waiters depend on their tips to survive as they get paid rubbish. Were we the assholes for taking the tip back? My husband and I are very conflicted on this.